The hall of the Anders space station was enormous. Its ceiling stretched so high that the uppermost lights seemed like distant stars. Rows of soldiers, officers, and dignitaries filled the room, their uniforms crisp, their postures perfect. Alien representatives from other sectors of the galaxy watched curiously from elevated platforms. The air smelled faintly of metal and ozone, a reminder that this was a place where decisions about war and peace were made. Through the massive doors strode Commander Elias Wren, the youngest officer in the Galactic Defense Fleet to command a battle squadron. His armor, once polished and gleaming, was now scratched, dented, and scorched black in places. Each mark told a story of battles fought, of ships destroyed, and of lives saved. Yet, in this hall filled with observers, those marks were not admired. They were mocked. "Look at him," whispered Lieutenant Merrick to a fellow officer. "He can't even keep his armor clean." A ripple of laughter followed. Some pointed at the gouges and scorched plates. Others whispered behind their hands, sneering at the young commander's supposed failure. Even a few alien delegates tilted their heads in mild amusement, though none dared laugh aloud. Elias felt the weight of their eyes, but he did not flinch. His stride remained steady, measured, commanding even. He knew why the armor looked this way. It had carried him through a battle that few would have survived. Each dent, scratch, and burn was a badge of survival. Yet those around him could not see beyond the metal dot at the front of the hall. Colonel Varn observed Elias with a sharp, critical gaze. Varn was older, seasoned, and proud of his reputation as an unyielding officer. He rarely smiled, and when he did, it was the smile of someone certain of his superiority. "This is the commander we are meant to celebrate?" he murmured to an aide. A child in broken armor? Pathetic. Elias ignored the snickers and the whispers. He moved past the rows of officers and civilians, his boots clicking against the polished metal floor. The hall seemed impossibly long, yet he walked with the confidence of someone who had faced death and returned finally. He reached the podium at the center. The murmurs of the crowd slowly faded as Elias adjusted the comm link on his chest plate. His voice, when it came, was calm but firm, carrying effortlessly through the room. "Greetings." He began. "I am Commander Elias Wren. I come before you not to boast, but to report the events of the last battle." The laughter had almost disappeared, replaced by curious glances. His armor may have been damaged, but his presence was commanding. Every eye followed him as he spoke. Elias began recounting the attack on the colony of Veriprime, a world on the edge of the galaxy. He spoke of the sudden ambush by the Zarthan fleet, a ruthless alien armada known for its merciless tactics. The fleet had overwhelmed the local defenses, and many ships had been destroyed in minutes. Elias described how he had led his squadron into the heart of the enemy formation, dodging energy blasts, maneuvering through debris, and protecting civilian transports. As he spoke, the audience could see not just the damage to his armor, but the invisible scars on his hands, arms, and face. He did not hide them. He did not need to. The story he told was not just of machines and technology, it was a story of human courage, ingenuity, and endurance. And though our ships were fewer, and our resources limited, Elias said, his eyes sweeping across the hall, we held the line. We protected thousands, and we lived to fight another day. Some officers whispered among themselves, still doubting, but others, particularly younger soldiers, stared with awe. They had heard rumors of Elias's daring, but seeing him return, battered but unbowed, made the stories real. Colonel Varn's lips tightened. He had fought many battles himself, but he could not deny the courage it took to survive what Elias had faced. He leaned over to his aide and muttered, "He got lucky. That is all." Elias finished his report with a calm nod. "This mission has ended, but the war continues, and we must remain vigilant." A moment of silence followed. Then polite applause began to ripple through the room. Some of the laughter had died down entirely, replaced by cautious respect. Elias did not smile. He did not seek approval. His duty was to protect, not to entertain. After the report, he stepped down from the podium and walked toward the exit. Along the way, his squad members, those who had survived the battle alongside him, fell into formation behind him. Their armor was pristine, their faces fresh, unscarred by the horrors of war. Yet they looked at Elias with a quiet reverence. To them, his damaged armor was not shameful, it was a symbol of leadership, of courage under fire. As he moved, Elias thought of the colonies that had depended on him, of the lives lost and saved. The laughter and whispers of the hall mattered little compared to the lives he had protected. Still, he could sense the tension in the room, the mix of disbelief and curiosity. They could mock his armor, but they could not mock the truth behind it, reaching the doors. He paused. The alien delegates watched him with interest, their expressions unreadable. He wondered what they saw, a failure or a survivor. He did not need to know. The galaxy was full of skeptics. What mattered was the mission ahead, outside the hall, in the quieter corridors of the space station. Elias finally allowed himself a moment to breathe. He loosened the chest plate slightly and looked down at his armor. Dents and burns marred the once pristine surface. One section near the left shoulder had melted slightly under a plasma blast. Yet the armor had held. It had protected him when it mattered most. A small voice interrupted his thoughts. "Commander Wren," said Lieutenant Sira, one of his closest allies. "They laughed at your armor, but I saw the eyes of those soldiers when you spoke. Even the colonels had to listen." Elias gave a small nod. "They will learn. Some lessons take longer than others." Sira smiled faintly, understanding. Elias's strength was not in flashy displays or polished appearances, it was in action, in courage, and in the quiet determination to protect others. No matter the cost, the intercom buzzed, summoning him to a briefing on a new mission. Another threat had appeared at the edge of human space. While the hall had laughed at him, the galaxy had already started taking notice. Elias straightened his back, adjusted his armor once more, and walked toward the briefing room. His damaged armor no longer felt like a mark of shame, it felt like proof. Proof that even the young and underestimated could face the fire of war and survive. As he entered the room, the lights reflected off the deep scratches and burns on his armor. For the first time, he realized that these marks might not just tell the story of a battle, they might tell the story of humanity itself. A story of courage, resilience, and the unyielding will to survive, even when others laughed at weakness. And somewhere deep in the galaxy, beyond the stars, the enemies of humanity would soon learn the same lesson. The briefing room was smaller than the grand hall, but no less intimidating. Screens lined the walls, displaying maps of star systems, enemy movements, and fleet positions. The faint hum of computers and the occasional beep of communications devices filled the air. Elias stepped inside, his damaged armor gleaming under the bright overhead lights. Colonel Varn was already there, arms crossed, a frown etched deep into his face. He didn't even glance at Elias as he entered. The other officers in the room, some seasoned veterans and some young recruits, watched curiously, waiting for the commander of the last battle to speak. "Commander Wren," Varn said sharply. Finally looking up, "Your report in the hall was entertaining. I still question how a damaged suit like yours could survive against the Zarthan fleet." Elias didn't flinch. He had heard doubt and mockery before, and he had learned to respond with calm, not anger. "Colonel," he said evenly, "armor is not the measure of survival. Strategy, timing, and the will to protect others are." A few of the younger officers shifted in their seats. They had seen Elias in action, yet hearing him speak with quiet authority made the courage they witnessed in the battle feel even more real. Varn's eyes narrowed. "Will you explain, Commander, or will you simply expect us to believe in luck?" Elias stepped to the central console and tapped a few commands. A three-dimensional holographic map appeared, showing the Vera Prime system, its colonies, and the positions of the Zarthan fleet. "It was not luck," Elias said, pointing at the formations. "The enemy expected a straightforward attack. They anticipated panic and disarray. Instead, we moved strategically, using the terrain of asteroid fields and plasma storms to our advantage. Each decision saved lives." He explained how his squadron had split into smaller units to draw enemy attention, while protecting civilian transports. He detailed how energy shields were timed to absorb attacks, just long enough for the civilians to escape. how evasive maneuvers saved ships from collision, and how his own damaged armor had absorbed a near-fatal plasma blast. And yet, Elias continued. Even with our tactics, the losses were heavy. But the Zarthan underestimated human ingenuity in our refusal to surrender. That is how we survived. That is how we saved thousands. Varn's frown deepened. Impressive words. But words alone do not win wars. Results do. Show me the data on casualties versus survivors. Elias tapped a few more commands. The map zoomed in on the colony world, showing small colored markers, red for casualties, green for survivors, and blue for ships that escaped intact. You can see, Elias said, we minimized losses where possible. Every decision was measured, precise, and yet we faced overwhelming odds. This armor, he gestured to the dents and burns on his suit, tells you nothing about what was required to survive. Some of the officers leaned forward, their skepticism slowly turning into admiration. They had seen the damage but had not understood its meaning. Now, with the full story, it was clear that Elias had not survived by chance. He had survived by skill, courage, and leadership. Colonel Varn, however, was not convinced. Skill alone cannot explain this. You are lucky, Commander. That is the only reason you are alive. Elias turned to him, eyes steady and unyielding. Luck plays no part when a leader is willing to make the choices others cannot. I acted because I had no choice. Others depended on me. That is the difference between survival and failure. Varn opened his mouth, but a sudden alarm cut him off. A red light flashed across the central console. The fleet's sensors had detected an unknown vessel entering human space. From the outer edge of the galaxy, the display showed a sleek, black ship, unlike any design cataloged in human or allied records. The room fell silent. Even Varn's sharp expression faltered. The officers whispered among themselves. Elias, however, remained calm. His instincts told him this was no ordinary enemy scout. What is it? Varn demanded. Elias studied the ship's readings. Unknown origin, high speed, cloaked technology. I suspect it is related to the Zarthan or perhaps an entirely new threat. We must investigate immediately. Varn hesitated. You would take your squad into unknown territory? Elias's jaw tightened. If we do not, the colonies could face annihilation. I will go. Sira, Elias's lieutenant, spoke up quietly. We can support him, Colonel. We know his tactics. We trust his judgment. Varn's frown remained, but he nodded slowly. Very well. Commander Rin, you have my approval. But remember, this is not a drill. Lives are at stake. Elias acknowledged the order. I am aware, sir. We will act with caution and speed. Outside the briefing room, the corridors were busy with preparations. Engineers rushed to repair damaged ships, while officers coordinated with fleet communications. Elias moved among them, checking on his squad. He could see the worry in their eyes, but he also saw determination. Each member trusted him, and that trust was a stronger shield than any armor. The damaged plates of Elias's suit clinked softly as he walked. He felt the familiar weight, not as a burden, but as a reminder of what he had survived and what he still must face. He paused at a viewport, staring at the galaxy beyond the station. Stars glittered like tiny beacons, but somewhere out there, danger was approaching. Sira joined him, her expression serious. Commander, are you worried? Elias shook his head. Worry is for those who cannot act. We do what must be done, and we adapt. That is how humans survive. Sira smiled faintly. You make it sound simple. Simple, yes, Elias replied, but not easy. And that is the difference. Easy choices rarely change the galaxy as the fleet prepared for departure. Elias reviewed the mission plan. They would intercept the unknown vessel, gather intelligence, and neutralize any immediate threat. He knew the risks in known technology, potential traps, and the possibility of encountering enemies far stronger than the Zarthan. But he also knew that hesitation could cost thousands of lives. The squad gathered around him. Each member had survived the previous battle alongside Elias, and each had learned to respect his judgment and courage. One by one, they inspected their armor, calibrated their weapons. and ran simulations of possible scenarios. Elias moved among them, offering advice, correcting small mistakes, and reinforcing the strategies that had worked in Vera Prime. Finally, the moment came. The squad entered their ships, engines humming to life. Elias sat in the command seat, his hands resting on the controls. He glanced at his squad, all prepared, all ready. "Remember," he said, voice calm and firm. "Our goal is intelligence first, survival second, and victory third. Move fast, stay alert, and trust each other." As the ships launched into space, leaving the station behind, the laughter from the hall seemed a distant memory. Out here, in the cold expanse of the galaxy, no one would mock damaged armor or question courage. Only action mattered. The unknown vessel awaited. The challenge was clear, but Elias's mind was steady. He knew the journey would be dangerous, that decisions would need to be made in seconds, and that the squad's lives depended on his leadership. And he was ready. For Elias Wren, the battle was never about appearances. It was about survival, strategy, and humanity's unyielding will. The galaxy might doubt them, others might laugh at their scars. But out here, among the stars, humans would continue to prove their worth, and somewhere, hidden beyond the sensors of the fleet, the unknown threat watched. It had yet to understand what it faced, not just a commander, but a species capable of courage, ingenuity, and survival against impossible odds. The void of space stretched endlessly before Commander Elias Wren and his squadron. Stars gleamed like distant diamonds, yet the beauty of the galaxy could not hide the danger lurking in the darkness. Ahead, their sensors tracked the unknown vessel. Its design was sleek, almost organic, and it moved in a way no human ship had ever moved before. Fast, unpredictable, and silent, Elias sat in the command seat of his flagship, the Valiant, scanning the incoming data. His armor, dented and scorched from the previous battle, made a soft clinking sound as he adjusted the controls. Around him, the squad's pilots checked systems, eyes sharp, hands steady. Each knew the dangers they faced, but each also trusted Elias's guidance. "Commander," Lieutenant Sierra said, her voice calm but firm, "we're approaching the edge of sensor range. The unknown vessel could change direction at any moment." "What's our plan?" Elias's eyes did not leave the display. "We approach cautiously, maintain formation, keep shields at maximum, and scan for any anomalies. If it attacks, we respond with precision. No unnecessary risks. Our priority is intelligence, not destruction." Behind him, the squad members nodded. They had faced countless dangers under Elias's command, yet this was different. The unknown vessel represented a threat unlike any they had encountered. But they had learned that Elias's calm was never false. It was his shield, his strategy, and often their only hope. Minutes passed like hours as the Valiant and its squadron moved forward. Then the ship appeared, out of the darkness, sudden and menacing. Its hull shimmered with energy, cloaking itself like a ripple across water. Sensors flickered, struggling to read its structure. "Contact visual," shouted one of the pilots. "It's huge." Elias leaned forward. The unknown ship was massive, longer than several of their fleet combined. Its surface glowed with faint, shifting lights. Weapons were hidden, but the faint pulse of energy suggested it could unleash destructive power in an instant. "Hold formation," Elias commanded. "Stay calm, observe and report. We do not engage unless necessary." As they drew closer, a sudden burst of energy rippled across the void. One of the squad's smaller ships jolted violently, sending alarms blaring. The energy seemed harmless, yet it tested their shields and the crew's nerves. "Adjust course," Elias ordered. "Anticipate sudden shifts. Don't panic." The squad executed his commands flawlessly. Every ship maneuvered with precision, avoiding collisions and maintaining their formation. In that moment, Elias's leadership shone. The others may have feared the unknown, but his calm focus allowed them to act with clarity. Hours passed as they approached the vessel. Then a new challenge emerged. The unknown ship began emitting strange signals, pulses that interfered with their communications and sensors. Screens flickered, readings fluctuated wildly, and the squad could barely maintain contact. "Commander, our shields are stabilizing," But these signals are unusual, Sarah reported. They're almost intelligent, Elias nodded slowly. It's studying us. Treat every action as if it is learning. Adjust shields dynamically, vary course patterns, and maintain formation. We are in a test, not a fight, at least for now. Suddenly, the unknown ship released a burst of energy toward a nearby asteroid field. The rocks exploded, sending debris hurtling toward the squadron. The pilots dodged with skill, but one smaller ship, piloted by Cadet Yelen, was caught in the blast. "Commander, Yelen is hit," one of the pilots shouted. Elias's heart tightened. He leaned over the controls. "All units, cover Yelen. Focus fire on the debris. Protect him. Sarah, lead the maneuver." The squadron moved as one, shielding Jalen's ship with precision and timing. The debris passed harmlessly, though Jalen's ship was damaged and shaking. Yet they had survived. Elias exhaled slowly. "Good work. This is exactly why discipline and trust matter. Every second counts." Once the immediate danger passed, Elias considered their options. The unknown vessel had not attacked directly, yet it had demonstrated power and intelligence. It was studying them, testing them, and perhaps evaluating whether humans were worth concern or destruction. "Commander," Sarah said softly, "do you think it will attack us?" Elias's gaze remained fixed on the vessel. "I don't know, but we will be ready, always. That is what it means to survive. That is what it means to be human." The squadron continued to shadow the vessel, maintaining a careful distance. Elias studied its movements, noting patterns, energy pulses, and speed variations. Every detail mattered. Every choice could mean life or death. Suddenly, a small pod detached from the vessel and drifted toward them. Sensors struggled to identify it, but its trajectory was clear. It was moving deliberately, as if inviting them closer. "Commander, it's approaching us," Sarah said, unease in her voice. Elias nodded. "Prepare a boarding shuttle. We do this carefully. No unnecessary risks. We learn what we can." As the boarding shuttle detached from the Valiant, Elias stood, adjusting the damage plates on his armor. Each dent and burn reminded him of previous battles, of survival against impossible odds. Now, they were preparing for a challenge even greater than before. The shuttle glided toward the pod, which opened like a flower, revealing a smooth interior and strange lights. Elias and his team entered cautiously, scanning every surface. It was unlike anything human engineers had designed. Shapes shifted in subtle patterns, walls pulsed gently, and an unfamiliar energy hummed through the air. "Keep sensors active," Elias said. "Document everything. We do not touch or interfere unless necessary." The team moved carefully, gathering data and samples. The unknown vessel seemed almost aware of their actions. Panels shifted subtly, lights dimmed and brightened, and the air itself seemed to react. Then, from the shadows, a figure appeared. Not humanoid, but not entirely alien either. Its form was fluid, shimmering with light and color, as if made of energy and matter at once. Elias raised his hand. "We come in peace. We mean no harm." The figure seemed to study them, its shifting form reflecting curiosity rather than hostility. It moved closer, and a soft, resonant hum filled the shuttle. The crew felt an odd calm, yet their senses were heightened. Sarah whispered, "Commander." "What is it?" Elias shook his head. "I don't know, but it's intelligent. We must proceed carefully." The figure projected images directly into their minds, scenes of distant galaxies, strange technologies, and vast fleets. It was showing them knowledge, information, and warnings. Elias realized that the vessel was not merely a threat, it was a messenger, a test, or perhaps a guide. He considered their options. They could retreat and report, or continue forward to understand what they faced. Every human instinct urged caution, but every lesson of survival taught that opportunity often came with risk. Record everything. Elias instructed. "We take what we learn back to the fleet. Our duty is to humanity." Every piece of knowledge could save lives. The team worked quickly, capturing data, analyzing symbols, and documenting the strange technologies. Elias watched closely, aware that every moment mattered. The unknown vessel pulsed and shifted around them, testing patience, observation, and composure. Finally, after what seemed like hours, the figure receded, returning to the vessel. The pod sealed, and the shuttle returned to the Valiant. Elias exhaled, allowing a brief moment of relief. They had survived the encounter, learned from it, and returned intact. He looked at his squad. Their faces a mixture of awe and exhaustion. "This is only the beginning," he said quietly. "We are stepping into a larger galaxy filled with unknowns, dangers, and possibilities. But we survived. We adapted, and we will continue to do so." Sierra nodded. "Your armor. It doesn't look as damaged after today, somehow." Elias allowed a small, wry smile. "It will always show the battles we've faced. But the scars remind us why we fight, why we endure, and why humanity survives where others fail." As the Valiant set course back toward friendly space, Elias reflected on the journey. The unknown vessel had tested them, and in doing so, had revealed the true strength of humans: courage, intelligence, teamwork, and the will to survive against the impossible. And somewhere, out there in the dark reaches of the galaxy, the unknown vessel carried the story of the human squad. It had encountered a story of resilience, leadership, and bravery that no armor, however damaged, could ever hide. The Valiant glided through the familiar corridors of space, returning to the Anders space station. The crew was tired, their bodies and minds pushed to the limits, yet their spirits were high. Elias Wren had led them through uncharted territory, faced unknown threats, and emerged with knowledge that could protect countless human colonies. Still, as they approached the station, Elias felt a familiar tension building. The officers in the hall had mocked his armor before. The whispers had not completely disappeared. He knew that some would still question his leadership, even after everything he had accomplished. The docking sequence completed, and the squad disembarked. The corridors were busy with activity engineers, medics, and soldiers bustling about, preparing for the next assignment. Elias moved with purpose, armor clinking softly with each step. His squad followed closely, a silent testament to their trust in his leadership. "Commander," Sierra said, her voice quiet, "they're preparing another hall gathering. They want a full debrief." Elias nodded. "Very well. Let them see the truth." The hall was larger than the one they had first entered. Rows of officers, dignitaries, and alien representatives filled the space. Their eyes trained on the doors as the returning squad entered. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some recognized the scars on Elias's armor, the dents and burns. Others had only heard rumors of his mission and were curious to see him return alive. Colonel Varn sat at the front, his posture rigid, expression unreadable. Elias could feel the weight of the man's scrutiny. Varn's sharp eyes were searching for any sign of weakness, any hint that Elias had failed or relied on luck. Elias stepped forward, each click of his boots echoing across the hall. The murmurs quieted, but the atmosphere was tense. Soldiers whispered among themselves, trying to read his expression, his intentions. Elias knew that appearances mattered here as much as words. Yet he also knew that the truth of his actions would speak louder than the armor he wore. He reached the podium, adjusting his comlink. His eyes swept over the hall, noting the skeptical glances, the whispers, and the silent anticipation. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he began to remove his helmet. The hall froze. The simple act of lifting the battered helmet revealed more than just a face. It revealed a story etched into every scar, every line, every mark. Elias's eyes were sharp, steady, and full of determination. His cheek bore a faint burn mark, his brow a thin scar from the previous battle. His expression was calm, yet commanding. For a long moment, no one spoke. Not a whisper, not a murmur, not a sound. The laughter that had once filled this hall was gone. It had been replaced by a profound silence. Elias's voice broke the quiet, calm but firm. "You see these scars," he said, voice carrying across the hall. "This armor, this body, bears the marks of survival, not failure. Every dent, every burn, every scratch tells a story of courage, determination, and sacrifice. We faced an unknown threat, one that none of us had ever encountered before, and we survived. Not because of luck, not because of chance, but because we acted with purpose, intelligence, and bravery. Some officers shifted in their seats, uncomfortable under the weight of truth. The younger soldiers, however, leaned forward, their faces reflecting awe and admiration. They understood, at last, what had been hidden behind the damaged plates: leadership, courage, and resilience beyond measure. Elias continued, "You may have laughed at my armor. You may have doubted my abilities, but the mission was not about appearances. It was about protecting lives, about defending humanity, about doing what others cannot. And that is exactly what we accomplished." Colonel Varn's lips tightened. He remained silent, yet his eyes betrayed a mixture of disbelief and grudging respect. He had fought many battles, survived countless skirmishes, but he could not ignore the fact that Elias had returned not only alive, but triumphant. The evidence of skill, strategy, and leadership was undeniable. Elias paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Leadership is not shown in polished armor or speeches. It is shown in action, in decisions made under fire, in sacrifices accepted without hesitation. Today, I stand before you, not as a hero seeking praise, but as a human who has witnessed what true courage looks like. A ripple of applause began, hesitant at first, then growing steadily. Some officers clapped, their eyes reflecting newfound respect. Others simply nodded, silent acknowledgement of the truth they could no longer deny. Even alien delegates, observing from above, seemed to recognize the strength and integrity of the human commander before them. Colonel Varn finally spoke, his voice measured but firm. "Commander Wren, your actions in the field, your leadership, and the results you achieved, they speak louder than any doubts I may have had. It seems I underestimated you." Elias met his gaze, nodding respectfully. "We all learn from experience, Colonel. Today, we learn that courage and intelligence often outweigh appearances, and that humanity's strength lies in its willingness to act in the face of the unknown." Sarah stepped forward, standing beside Elias. She added, "Commander Wren has not only returned with valuable intelligence, but has demonstrated the very qualities we must instill in every soldier. We now know what humans can achieve when faced with impossible odds." The hall was silent again, but this time it was a silence of respect, reflection, and understanding. Elias glanced at his squad, each member standing tall, eyes proud. They had endured the dangers of unknown space, faced an alien intelligence, and returned with knowledge and courage intact. Elias turned back to the hall. "Let this be a lesson," he said, voice steady. "We must never judge by appearances, never underestimate the young, the unpolished, or the seemingly weak. Strength is measured not in perfection, but in resilience, not in armor, but in heart, not in fearlessness, but in the courage to act despite fear." The applause this time was stronger, more confident, echoing throughout the hall. Some officers rose to their feet, joining in the tribute to the commander who had once been laughed at, but who now commanded respect through deeds rather than words. Even Colonel Varn allowed a small, almost imperceptible nod. Elias's words and actions had shattered the illusions of superiority, arrogance, and mockery. The hall had fallen silent at the truth, and in that silence, recognition of true courage and leadership had emerged. Elias replaced his helmet, securing it carefully over his head. The act symbolized more than protection. It symbolized humility, readiness, and responsibility. He stepped down from the podium, letting the weight of his words linger in the minds of all present. As the squad prepared to leave, whispers of admiration and astonishment followed them. Officers who had doubted Elias before now spoke quietly among themselves, discussing the lessons learned from his mission. The younger soldiers carried a sense of inspiration, their eyes bright with the knowledge that courage and intelligence could triumph over fear and mockery. Outside the hall, the vastness of the space station awaited them. Engineers and medics had already begun repairing the Valiant and other ships, preparing for future missions. Elias moved among them, checking on supplies, equipment, and the welfare of his squad. The mission had been successful, but the work of protection, defense, and exploration never ended. Sarah walked beside him, her eyes reflecting pride and admiration. "Commander, they will remember this day," she said softly. Elias nodded, his voice quiet but firm. "They will remember it not because of me, but because of what humanity can achieve. Every person who survived, every life protected, every lesson learned. That is what matters. That is what will be remembered." The squad returned to their quarters, their minds filled with both exhaustion and exhilaration. They had faced unknown threats, survived alien tests, and returned with knowledge that could save countless lives. They had also witnessed the transformation of their commander from a mocked figure to a symbol of courage and leadership. Elias stood in his quarters, examining the armor that had once been a source of ridicule. Now, each dent, each burn, each scratch was a badge of honor. They told the story of survival, of human ingenuity, and of the unyielding spirit that refused to bow to fear. He knew that the galaxy would continue to test humanity, that new threats would emerge, and that the future held challenges even greater than those faced so far. But Elias also knew that with courage, intelligence, and the willingness to act, humanity could face the unknown and endure. As he looked out at the stars, he felt a sense of calm determination. The hall had fallen silent when he revealed the truth, and that silence had been replaced with understanding and respect. The journey was far from over, but Elias Rin had proven that even a damaged armor could carry the weight of heroism and inspire all who witnessed it. The universe beyond the station awaited. Unknown challenges, distant worlds, and mysterious threats lay ahead. But Elias, his squad, and humanity were ready, for they had learned that courage, resilience, and leadership were the true armor of survival, and that even when others laughed, the quiet strength of humanity could command the respect of the galaxy. The Ender space station hummed with life as Commander Elias Rin prepared for the final debriefing of his mission. The events of the past weeks had spread quickly through the fleet. News of his encounter with the unknown vessel, the intelligence gathered, and the skillful leadership that had kept his squad alive. The hall that had once laughed at him now waited to witness the truth of his deeds. Elias adjusted his damaged armor, running his fingers over the scratches, the burns, and the dents. Each mark told a story of courage, survival, and determination. Today, those stories would become a lesson for all. He led his squad through the corridors, their steps confident and steady. They had faced unknown dangers, survived impossible tests, and returned not just with intelligence, but with a renewed understanding of what humanity was capable of. The hall was full. Officers, dignitaries, and alien representatives filled every seat. The younger soldiers watched with admiration, eager to see the commander who had turned ridicule into respect. The air was tense but expectant. Even Colonel Varn, once critical and skeptical, waited quietly, his arms crossed but eyes reflecting a new awareness. Elias stepped onto the platform, the worn armor clinking softly. He surveyed the room, seeing the curiosity, the skepticism, and now the respect. He removed his helmet slowly, letting the silence settle over the crowd. His face bore the faint scars of battle, his eyes steady, calm, and full of determination. The silence was profound. No one laughed, no one whispered. For the first time, the hall understood what courage and leadership truly looked like. Elias spoke, his voice carrying evenly, firmly, and clearly. Today, I stand before you not to claim glory, but to share what we have learned. This mission was not about personal achievement or pride. It was about humanity. It was about the lives we protect, the intelligence we gather, and the decisions we make when facing the unknown. He paused, letting his words resonate. You may have seen damaged armor, scars, or imperfections and judge them. But these marks do not tell the story of weakness, they tell the story of resilience. They tell the story of leadership under fire, of courage in the face of uncertainty, and of the human spirit refusing to yield to fear. The applause began softly, hesitant at first, then growing steadily. Soldiers who had doubted him now stood in quiet admiration. Some officers rose to their feet, acknowledging the truth of his actions. Even alien delegates, observing with analytical eyes, seemed to recognize the strength of the human commander before them. Elias gestured to his squad. These are the people who stood with me. Together, we faced dangers that were unknown, unpredictable, and deadly. Together, we adapted, survived, and succeeded. They are proof that humanity thrives not because of perfection, but because of courage, intelligence, and trust in one another. Sira stepped forward beside him. Commander Wren has shown us that leadership is not about appearances. It is about action, responsibility, and the courage to face the impossible. We are honored to have served under him. Varn spoke next, his voice measured, carrying the weight of experience. Commander Wren, your actions and leadership have proven that courage and ingenuity can surpass even the most advanced threats. I underestimated you. Today, the fleet and the colonies must learn from your example. Elias nodded respectfully. Thank you, Colonel. Let this not be about me alone. Let this be a reminder of what humanity is capable of when we act with intelligence, courage, and determination. The crowd erupted in applause, this time louder, more confident, and filled with genuine admiration. The laughter that had once echoed in the halls was gone. It had been replaced with respect, understanding, and inspiration. After the debriefing, Elias and his squad returned to the station's museum, where his damaged armor was placed on display. It had once been a source of ridicule. Now, it was a symbol. The plaque beneath it read, "This armor bears the marks of courage, resilience, and leadership. Let it inspire all who face the unknown to act with bravery, intelligence, and the unyielding will to protect life." Visitors from across the galaxy would come to see it, to learn the story of a commander who turned mockery into respect. Young soldiers would study the dents and burns, imagining the battles fought and the lives saved. They would understand that heroism was not about appearances, but about the choices one makes when the stakes are highest. Elias walked among the visitors, speaking quietly to young recruits, sharing lessons about courage, leadership, and teamwork. He emphasized that every scar, every mistake, and every challenge could teach something valuable. Do not fear failure, he told them. Fear only comes when you refuse to try. Courage is measured not by victories alone, but by the willingness to act when the outcome is uncertain. Meanwhile, intelligence gathered from the unknown vessel revealed technologies and insights that would help protect human colonies for generations. Elias's mission had not only survived, but it had strengthened humanity's position in the galaxy. Back in the hall, a council convened to discuss the implications of the intelligence. Elias was invited, not just as a witness, but as a leader whose experience could guide the fleet. He listened, contributed, and advised, demonstrating that his value was not just in battle, but in wisdom, judgment, and foresight over time. The story of Elias Wren spread across colonies, star systems, and fleets. Children read about the young commander who faced ridicule, led his squad through danger, and emerged victorious. They learned that courage, ingenuity, and perseverance could turn doubt into triumph. Years later, Elias would continue to lead missions, train new officers, and guide humanity through the challenges of an ever-expanding galaxy. His armor, now retired, remained in the museum as a constant reminder. True strength is measured not by appearances, but by actions, decisions, and the courage to face the unknown. Even as humanity encountered new threats, new challenges, and distant civilizations, the lesson of Elias Wren endured. A commander who had once been laughed at now inspired generations. The hall that had once mocked him had fallen silent, and in that silence, respect, understanding, and admiration had been born. As Elias looked out at the stars from the observation deck of the station, he reflected on the journey. The galaxy was vast, full of unknown dangers, but it was also full of opportunity. Humanity had survived because it dared to act, to face fear, and to trust in one another. And in that courage, the universe had begun to recognize the strength of the human spirit. Sira joined him, her expression calm and proud. Commander, the fleet looks up to you, not because of your armor, but because of who you are. Elias nodded, a small smile touching his lips. It was never about me. It was about all of us. Every life saved, every choice made, every risk taken. That is what matters. That is the true armor of humanity. As the observation deck lights reflected off the worn plates of his armor, Elias knew the journey would continue. Battles would come, decisions would be difficult, and dangers would rise from the darkness of space. But humanity would endure. Humans would rise, adapt, and inspire. And even when others doubted or laughed, the courage to act, the intelligence to strategize, and the will to survive would always shine in the end. Elias Wren's story became more than the tale of a commander or a battle. It became a symbol of humanity itself, resilient, courageous, and unyielding, ready to face the unknown and triumph. And in every corner of the galaxy where humans ventured, they carried the lesson that true heroism does not come from perfection, but from the courage to act, the strength to endure, and the wisdom to lead. The hall had fallen silent when he removed his helmet that first time. That silence had echoed across the stars, and now it was filled with admiration, respect, and the promise of a bright future. Humanity had proven its worth not in flawless appearances, but in resilience, courage, and the unbreakable spirit of its people. Commander Elias Wren smiled as he returned to his squad, ready to face whatever the galaxy had in store. For he knew that, no matter what came, humanity would always rise, adapt, and endure, and that even damaged armor could shine as a symbol of heroism.